friendly.
Well, or reading. I don't know.
No.
But I think
There's a couple. I was going to sit, but I think I may stand. And where would make the most sense? Perhaps teachers.
There's a chair. Can I sit here? Does that? Oh, can you see and hear me if I sit, or would you rather I stand? You can sit. Okay. And I did not know I was being videotaped, so. Hi, welcome. Come have a seat.
Just here to direct traffic.
Okay, so here's what I know from teaching. If I give you the handouts right now, you'll read the handouts while I'm talking to you. But you don't, but the good thing is you don't have to take notes. So I actually have my whole talk bullet pointed, all the tips, because I'm going to throw at you like 100 different tips. You don't have to remember, they will all be on the sheet. But then I also have a list, and I started, some of you have little ones, so I started with tips and books for babies. But I have book lists here of kind of series that we recommend, books for kind of each age group. If you're looking for that, I've got tips. Yay. And then I've got a bunch of just articles about how to get your children to read, some philosophies about reading. So a bunch of stuff that I will leave here that you can take at the end, but not now. I know how this goes. All this stuff I've been saying forever. So you can go down the list. The first thing I'm going to leave is my talk, and then you can see if the other stuff is interesting to you. Should I back up even farther? Does that work better? I'll be behind you. Okay. All right. Well, come on. Do we have enough chairs? We've got a couple more? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming. This is the first of what we're hoping are several talks that we're going to give throughout the year. That Kara Diener, if everyone, I don't know if you know, if everyone knows Kara Diener, our lower school counselor, we kind of came up with this idea last spring. We were thinking, you know, parents keep asking about this, but what about that? And so we put together a series of talks that we think are of interest to lower school parents. I'm one of those, it takes a village kind of people. I think that we're all in this together, and parenting is the hardest job you'll ever do, and so the more we can help each other in that process, the better. So on purpose, I made my first talk about reading because it's something that I'm just super passionate about. As an educator, for sure, and I'll talk about that in a second, but as a mom, as a parent, like all of you, and what it's done for my own family. We, as a school, are only part of this equation of raising great readers. We teach them to read, and I think we do that really, really well. We teach them skills, we teach them strategies, we teach them all kinds of things. We even encourage and celebrate reading and get them, you know, as much as we can to love it. But we're only part of the equation. You're the other part. So I can't, at school, establish a habit of reading in them. I can't control how much they read when they're out of school. At school we can only do half of it, and so you do the other half at home. And as a parent, I know how hard that is. I know you get home and you're cooking dinner, and there are things that are easier than sitting down with a book. So some of these tips hopefully will help you on your way to growing lifelong readers in your own house. So why is reading so important? Why are we talking about it? Well, it is the single greatest predictor of long-term academic success. Even in math, even in science. They're going to have to read, they're going to have to comprehend. So, for their whole educational journey, there's some things back there.
Thank you.
They're going to need to be great readers. So that's the first. You might not be thinking right now about big stakes standardized tests, SATs, ACTs, what it takes to get your kids into college, but you kind of need to be when it comes to reading. I'm going to brag about my kids for a minute. My two oldest kids have taken those big stakes standardized tests and both scored perfect on the reading section. There are only every single year between 3,000 and 4,000 kids in the whole world out of the 1.5 million kids who take these tests who get perfect. You want to know how many standardized test prep classes my kids took? 0. They spent no time preparing for the reading section. They showed up and they scored that because they're lifelong readers. My son Henry has been asked by many people to help prepare for the SAT. Can you give me some tips? Well, people have asked me, can I pay him to prepare my child for the SAT? And what Henry said to me was, about the reading section, he said, Mom, I can teach people some of the little tricks that I've done. I can teach them, some strategies. He said that the reading section is actually not really hard. It's really long. And he said, I can't, certainly in one session, but I couldn't in a month, in 3 months, even in a year, teach someone to be a fast enough reader to finish that section to get perfect on it. He said, that takes a lifetime of reading. So, you may not be thinking about it right now, but that's going to prepare your kids now for their success in the future. I can count on one hand, or less than the fingers of one hand, the things as a parent that I feel like I did perfectly. I wouldn't go back and change at all. Maybe you guys can do better than that, but really one hand. But one of those things is developing a love of reading in my own kids. So today, I'm going to give you tips that are certainly research-based, but these are all tips that I've either used in my own family, in my own classroom, or I've seen used with other kids. So I know that these tips work, not just because the researchers say they work, but because I've seen them work. So there's a section in here where I talk about starting early and I talk about babies. So some of you, raise your hand if you have a little one still at home. I see some little ones here. Okay, so I'm not actually going to go over that here because most of us don't have the little itty-bitty ones. If you do, fabulous, because that's the best place to start. You've got a captive audience and they don't know any other way than what you show them. So that is the easiest. There are tips, but I'm going to go on and tell you the good news is it's never too late. So if you didn't do all these tips with your newborn, with your toddler, that's okay, there's still time. So, my first tip for you is expand your definition of books. So, we all want our kids to read the classics, so wouldn't it be great if they're reading highbrow literature? Let that go. If your child loves comic books, our own librarian kind of rolls her eyes behind the scenes when everyone wants to read the wimpy kids or the thing, that aren't the greatest, but they're reading. So expand your definition of what you think is okay. Have your child set the reading pace. Don't worry if a book seems too babyish. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see well-meaning parents make. They give their child a book that's too hard, thinking it will challenge them and make them become better readers. That's wrong. What that's going to do is make them hate books because you've given them something that's too hard. The best thing you can do at home is actually step back a little bit. Let them grab what they want. That's going to build their fluency. That's going to build their comprehension. We challenge them here, plenty, I promise. And they will get to the point where they'll start challenging themselves a little bit, especially if they get into a series and they just have to have that next book, but let them set the pace. My oldest, so actually all 3 of my kids have attended Concordia Language Villages, which is a language camp in Minnesota. They immerse them in a foreign language. And so one of the things you can't do that they call contraband is you can't bring anything in English. Doesn't matter what level you are, I can't show anything in English. My kids are all big readers, and so they wanted to bring books. And so the first time Henry went, we bought him Harry Potter in Spanish. He had read the first Harry Potter book probably 8 times. He had seen the movie, he knew it well. And he spoke Spanish fairly well. He came home, I said, so did you read Harry Potter? He said, no, Mom. It was so hard. And he said, and I thought this was so great, he said, I understand now why some of my friends don't like reading. He said, it was just hard. I had to work so hard to get through one page and to understand it that I ended up putting it down. So think about that with your own kids when you're looking at what level book. We know, starting in 1st grade, we know exactly what level your child is. So if you ever have a question about that, you can ask your child's teacher. Lots of times we talk about it in the conferences, or it'll be in the report card. But if you ever need to know, we do it 3 times a year, you can ask us. And on the back of many books, there's a little letter, which you wouldn't know what that meant unless you were an educator, but you can tell what level the book is. And so I would encourage you to stay at your child's level or even below when they're reading for pleasure. If you are reading with them, talk it out with them, but only to a point. Okay? So it's great to say, what's up, what are you reading about? And if they're excited to talk about it, you can keep asking them questions. If they get annoyed with you, and it's a little gender specific, boys usually will get a little bit more annoyed with you than girls, stop. Don't make it a chore. Continue to read to your older child. So raise your hand if your child's already reading well. That's actually not the time to stop reading to your child just because they can read well. Especially a bedtime story, and especially a chapter book, and we'll get into this a little bit later, and especially a book that they can't read yet, that is a little too hard for them. That's a great time. Get them hooked on a series. This is a great way to continue it. If you get them hooked on a series, they will want to read the next one. And it was wonderful when my kids were little, Harry Potter was coming out, and so they would count down the days till the next time, till the next book was released. And that just gets them so excited about reading, and they'll want to keep going. I've got on my list, there's a whole list of series that we recommend. Read what's popular. So if it's in the news, if everyone's reading it, if there's a movie about it, read what's popular. Again, I know we want them to read what's great. They will someday, I promise. My daughter's favorite book is Pride and Prejudice. Didn't start out that way. Started out with Junie B. Jones. And that's okay. Consider magazines. So if you have an older child who really, like, a book is daunting to them, but a magazine isn't. So a book or a magazine on crafts, Sports Illustrated for kids, that's not as daunting for them to read just an article. If you have a younger sibling in the house, enlist their help. So could you read, Carter, could you read to Reagan? Could you, while I'm cooking, this would be such a help to me. If you have a pet, I know it sounds corny, but kids love reading to their dog. So that's something too, could you please keep the dog occupied while I'm doing whatever? They will a lot of times. Let your kids be in charge of what they read. So this is where you can give them some control. We had a parent once in 3rd grade who gave their son Pilgrim's Progress. Oh my gosh, I read that in college and I didn't understand it in college. Yes, they can read the words, but they probably can't understand it, and then what good is it? So let them be in charge of what they read, and don't be throwing things at them just because you think that it's better for them to read it. This is a big one. Don't make reading assignment. This is another mistake that well-meaning parents make. They will say, go read that book for 10 minutes, and sometimes they even make it be a condition to do something more fun. Read for 10 minutes, then you can play the video game. Well, now you've made it an assignment. I never set a clock for reading, ever, because you've made it an assignment. The best way to suck the joy right out of reading is to make it seem like it's a chore or an assignment. Don't use it as a means to something more fun. It should be the more fun, but you have to talk about it that way. All right, here's my best advice that I'm going to give you all morning long, and I'll tell you it's the advice you're going to hate the most and that you probably won't follow, but I promise you it's the best advice, and that's to eliminate the distractions. And so what do we think the distractions are? Yeah. It's anything electronic. So any kind of screen time, a video game, a computer game, TV, a movie. It's easier. It's instant gratification. It is no thinking, and it's so much easier for them to do. And if we're honest with ourselves as adults, we choose the easier too. And so if the easier is available to them, they're going to choose it. So you need to eliminate it. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, your car video might need to break really soon. That's an easy place to start because that's an easy place to read. That is a quiet time where nothing else is happening. They're captive. There's nothing else for them to do. And a lot of us have become in the habit of clicking that on, and they're really happy to do that. It's going to be hard in the short term. I'm not going to lie. It is hard in the short term. But once you get over that hump, they will grab for books. And it's so much easier because you can have books go with them anywhere. They don't make any noise. They're easy once you get over that hump. I would say eliminate in our house, we didn't do any of those things. We did not watch TV. We might turn it on if it was a rainy day or someone was sick, and then it would be a half an hour total for the whole entire time. We didn't do any kind of, there was no handing of the phone or an iPad to play a game. We just got them in the habit of reaching for something else. It didn't have to be a book. It just ended up being a book a lot of the times because there wasn't anything to do. One year, my daughter was first in the 100 book club, and Frances Redmond said, "Ellie, I'm going to have to ask your mom what her secret is." And she said, "Oh, I can tell you her secret. There's nothing else to do around our house." So you're going to have to eliminate that if you think that they're going to reach for a book. A lot of us tend to use those electronic things as a reward. I don't like that any more than offering them a cupcake as a reward. You just elevated that to a high up status. You won't be able to do this yet, but later it needs to be, we'll go buy a new book if you. We'll take a trip to the library if you. Because right now it's, if you do this, then you can have 10 minutes of screen time. And you've just elevated that easy thing, up to this high level. So that's my top. I'll go back now to things but that's my top advice. It really, really works. The next set of advice, establish a habit. So it starts with reading aloud to your child when they're little, but keep going. They do look forward to it. Even our fourth graders, they do look forward to being read to. It's a great way to keep them reading also, but to lie down before bed and read them the next chapter in a book. So it starts with the reading aloud. Have plenty of books in your house. Go to the library, take books out from here. You can go to a used bookstore. There are ways to get inexpensive books. Our own, the little thing that comes home every month, the Scholastic, those are really pretty inexpensive, and then kids, again, can be in control of what they're getting. They're more likely to read it if they picked it out. Model reading for your child. How many of you sit down and read a magazine or read a book before bed? When they see that, it becomes part of your household and part of your household habits. Visit your local library often. Some of you have done the summer reading program. That's a great way to get them involved and get them excited. Check out a local bookstore, and that doesn't mean it has to be an expensive trip. That doesn't mean you're going to buy 5 books when you go, but if you have them sit down and preview a lot of books, it's kind of an outing, and it can be inexpensive, especially if you walk out with one, $5 paperback. You can spend a lot of time at a local bookstore, and they get excited about that. Let me see, I always talked about that one. You can create a library for your child in your house and let them choose what goes in it. So even if you have books somewhere else, if you've got a crate or something to put in their room by their bed where they got to choose what goes in it, it's exciting for them. Subscribe to children's magazines. So if you have, again, children that you're really trying to encourage and a book seems like too much, if you subscribe to a children's magazine, when it comes in the mail, they get excited, they will sit down and read it. Carry books wherever you go. Leave a little basket by the toilet. Keep them by their bed, keep them in the car. Everywhere you go, make sure you have books, so that's the easy thing for them to grab for. All right, and then this one to me is my most fun, which is get creative. So sometimes you gotta employ a little bit more. Sometimes you have to get a little tricky or go to kind of the next level to get them to read. This one's an easy one though. And I do this sometimes. The teacher will tell me like, oh my
class isn't reading for the book club, or I can't get them interested. And so I'll often go in and say, I'm going to do a little book club. And I'll start reading a book, and then I say, oh, Mrs. Guthrie needs me, and I have to go. And I put it down. And then they go, well, what's going to happen next? And somebody wants to grab it. So if you can do that at home, too. Read a chapter, get to like an exciting part, and then say, I've got to put a little laundry in. Put the book down. They usually will pick it up. This is a bigger one. Take a field trip inside with the book. It doesn't have to be a big one. It can be going somewhere. It's just local, driving, to a farm if you've read a book about a farm or anything like that. I kind of did an over-the-top one because I'm from California. And so I was going home every summer to visit my family. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book Island of the Blue Dolphins. It's a wonderful book. But it was at a time when my kids were little. I was reading it to them because it was kind of an advanced book. But Island of the Blue Dolphins, you don't know until the end of the book that it's actually a true story about a woman who was left on an island off of the coast of California, a native person, and how she survived on this island, and then how she was found and brought to the Santa Barbara mission. You don't find out till the end of the book, it's a true story. But we went and we recreated the journey. We actually took the boat from Santa Barbara out to the island so we could see where she lived, and then we went to the Santa Barbara mission where her grave is. We went to a museum to see, they talked about this cormorant skirt that she made, so we went and saw the cormorant feathers. Anyway, it was fabulous and so much fun, but it made the book come alive for them. So that one's super over the top, I know.
You didn't leave the kids on the island.
Well, that was hard to do. Yeah, with the wild dogs, but yeah. We wanted to be realistic. So, but if you can do any kind of little field trip like that, it does make it really exciting for them. Give bonus book time. Especially on the weekends. You can stay up 15 minutes late. I'm going to put this in by your bed. It's a special treat for you. Again, now you're elevating reading to that level. When the kids are little, especially, they love when you act out a story for them. Use the silly voices, put on a costume, make it really fun for them. Publish their work. So you can do this low tech. You can type it up on a computer, have them illustrate it, print something out. But there are places you can buy a kit, or you can go online and just Google it, publish my work. And it's really not that expensive, and they can write their own book. You can send it away, and it actually comes back bound. Usually it's about $19 to get it done, but it's an exciting thing. Let me see. To do other activities related to the book, and serve food that is tied to the book. So if you're doing Very Hungry Caterpillar, you can kind of recreate this little journey of the food. I don't know if you know the book Stone Soup. That was one of my children's favorite as a child, so we made stone soup one night for dinner, which is just vegetable soup with a rock in it, but they thought it was great. You can come up with a craft that goes along with the book, something that ties book into something fun that they already like. So there you have it. Those are my top tips, a whole bunch of them. I'd love it if you'd go home and try one or two. These are, again, all things that I've done with my own kids, or I did when I was a teacher with my kids in my classroom, or have seen done. We really didn't have to do the magazine thing, but I know for a lot of kids that works. So I do know that these tips work. They're fun, and I hope I've given you something to think about and some practical things that you can do in your own house to encourage reading. Anyone have any questions?
I was thinking of a couple of things you said, like the 15 minutes after, and I notice sometimes with my kids, and I'm sure other people do this too, if I say, okay, you have these 15 minutes or whatever the time, and you can take a flashlight and put it under your covers, and they sort of make it like a fun little activity, they love that. And then the other piece here, and I won't give a teacher's name because I don't know if they want flooded work, but oftentimes if a child I know writes a little story at home, they can either share that during morning meeting as their what did you do this weekend, or even in the upper grades, the teacher, if they go and say I wrote this, they'll allow them to stand up front and read the story, and just so that it builds their confidence, they're celebrating reading. So it's nice how, although we have to enforce it at home, it can be reinforced at school.
my two, and it's something you just said about giving them 20 minutes to, you know, you got 20 minutes to read, I want you to sit down and read, and after that, then you can go do this, and I'm guilty of that, and my wife is guilty of that, and we got to try
A
to,
lot of us
because
are.
that's a good
It's really
point,
common.
because you hit me, that hurt, because I mean, that's what we're trying to do. But that's what we've been doing, and that's wrong. And so we're gonna have to adjust our way of doing, getting him to read, you know, because Josh is struggling right now. He doesn't, you know, having to beat it in him to read, you know, so.
And it is, moms and boys, it is harder because there's not as much written for boys. And I'll warn you right now, it gets even harder. You get up to the middle school years and high school years, and there's not as much written for boys. There are gobs of things for girls, but things that really spark boys' interest, there's not as much, and you have to be a lot more creative.
Exactly. And we got too much stuff. We got games, I mean, you know, and we got things too much for them to do. And we're guilty, and I've got to.
Kids will go to the easier, and we're
They
seeing
will.
as educators, going off a little on a tangent, but we have a hard time keeping their attention with lessons that we used to think were really exciting because a video game is more exciting. And here's the other thing about a video game. If you don't like it, you switch games just like that. There's no penalty for turning off that game and starting a different game. And so we're kind of wiring them now to go, boring, not fun, switch right away.
I think that even with your little ones, which you probably put this in your notes, but you said you were gonna go past that, but they can have their book time in their beds too without me.
They
Like,
do, and they just
love
turn
it. They have their flashlights, they do their picture reading.
Absolutely.
Murphy Man Winifred will even yell from the bathroom, can someone hand me my book? So, I mean, even the little ones can have them in the car without you having to read to them.
And it is relaxing for them. If you teach them that that's relaxing, they will turn to it.
What about those reading apps and the reading games? Yeah, you see those. They will tell you like a word and they have to,
Find it.
yeah.
As far as video games, that's about as good as it can get. And we do some of that here. We definitely use, we use iPads all the time here in the classroom, so we definitely do some of that. I would say that if your child is a pretty fluent reader, you don't need it. And so I'd rather have her have a book than do the reading game.
Is it a good alternative to books? Because
No.
my daughter likes to read.
It's not a
This
great
one-
alternative to books. And I would say if your child has to have a device of some sort, then they can read the book on the device. And we're going in that direction. So I don't know if that's a bad thing to get them used to that, as long as that's all that's on it. They're gonna be sneaky about it. They are in our classrooms. We have something in 4th grade called Go Guardian, so that because we're one-to-one with Chromebooks in the 4th grade, and they do research all the time, they work on their Chromebooks, which is great. But we have something now called Go Guardian, where on the computer screen at the teacher's desk, it shows what's on everyone's screen. Because obviously we don't have anything that we don't consider of educational value, but they'll switch over to an educational game. And and the great thing is all she has to do is click on her computer. Because it changes what's on their computer screen, so it's awesome. So that's the only thing you have to be a little bit careful if you're giving them an iPad that has games on it also. If you hand them a book, you probably have just an actual book. But I think that, those games aren't horrible, but I'd rather see book reading. Well, thank you for your questions, for your presentation. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much.
I'll be here if you have other questions or comments. There are, as I said, a bunch of handouts. The first one is all my tips. So you didn't have to take notes, and then if you want to look for the book list. And then there's just some articles that I thought were interesting about helping your child read. Some little extra tips. So thanks for coming.